The dramatic end to Joaquín El Chapo Guzmán's reign began with a carefully orchestrated manhunt that spanned continents. After years of dominating the international drug trade and twice escaping from Mexican prisons, El Chapo became one of the world's most hunted fugitives. His final capture in January 2016 was the result of relentless intelligence work by Mexican Marines working closely with U.S. agencies such as the DEA and the U.S. Marshals. They tracked encrypted phone calls, intercepted informants, and finally raided a safe house in Los Mochis, Sinaloa. Guzmán attempted to flee through a hidden drainage tunnel, but was caught after a high-speed chase. Once arrested, the next challenge was ensuring he would never slip through the cracks again. Mexican authorities, aware of his past prison breaks, one in 2001 hidden inside a laundry cart and another in 2015 through a mile-long tunnel, knew their facilities could not hold him indefinitely. The United States filed an immediate extradition request, citing his role as the head of the Sinaloa cartel and multiple indictments for drug trafficking, murder conspiracies, and money laundering. For months, lawyers fought extradition. But the decision came in early 2017. El Chapo would be transferred to the United States, where a trial in New York awaited. The transfer itself was a spectacle of security. On January 19, 2017, an unmarked jet prepared to leave Mexico under the highest-level secrecy. Mexican Marines escorted him to the airport with an armed convoy, blocking streets and using decoy vehicles. U.S. Marshals and DEA agents were on standby, ensuring that not even a hint of his movement leaked to the public until he was already airborne. The journey to New York was unlike any standard prisoner transfer. Federal agents maintained constant surveillance, with armed guards stationed inside the plane and fighter jets on alert in case of any unexpected threats. El Chapo remained handcuffed, wearing a special security belt, and was watched closely for any sign of resistance. By the time the world learned of his extradition, he was already landing at MacArthur Airport on Long Island, stepping onto U.S. soil to face justice. After a brief stay in a federal detention center in Brooklyn, where he faced a historic trial that revealed the depths of his cartel's operations, Guzmán was convicted on multiple counts in 2019. The verdict meant life imprisonment plus 30 years, an unmistakable signal that the U.S. intended to eliminate any chance of escape. Immediately after sentencing, plans were made to transfer him to America's most secure facility, the notorious ADX Florence in Colorado. The move to Florence was another meticulously planned operation. Known as the Alcatraz of the Rockies, ADX is designed for inmates deemed too dangerous or escape-prone for standard maximum security prisons. Transporting Guzmán required a covert high-security flight similar to his extradition. U.S. Marshals again deployed decoy vehicles, locked down airspace, and a heavily armed escort team to ensure there was no opportunity for interference from his cartel's vast network. When the prison gates finally closed behind him, El Chapo entered a world far removed from the sprawling empire he once commanded. The man who had controlled billions of dollars in drug trade and evaded authorities for decades was now just inmate number 89,914,053, locked away in an isolated cell where every movement, every sound, and every breath would be monitored. His days of elaborate tunnels and covert operations were officially over, replaced by a silent routine in the most secure prison on Earth, a beginning to the extreme conditions he now endures daily. Inside ADX Florence, Joaquín El Chapo Guzmán lives a life defined by isolation, precision, and constant surveillance. His world is a 7 by 12-foot concrete cell, barely larger than a walk-in closet, built to prevent even the smallest chance of escape. The door is a solid steel barrier with a narrow slot for food trays and a tiny reinforced window measuring only a few inches across. From that slit, he can glimpse nothing more than a patch of sky and a fragment of the prison wall, a view designed to disorient and remind inmates of their absolute confinement. The cell's interior is stark and practical. A concrete bed frame topped with a thin mattress, a combination stainless steel toilet and sink, a fixed desk, and a single chair. Bright fluorescent lights remain on nearly 24 hours a day, dimmed slightly at night but never fully dark. Surveillance cameras monitor him around the clock, and guards perform random checks through the small viewing port. Even a whisper of communication with other prisoners is almost impossible. Soundproof walls ensure that no voice carries beyond his own space. El Chapo's daily routine is unyielding. Around 5:30 a.m., the overhead light brightens to signal wake-up. Breakfast, usually a simple meal of cereal or eggs, is passed through the door slot. Meals are scheduled at exact times, and every movement is controlled. Exercise, the only break from the cell, is limited to a single hour per day in what inmates call the concrete box, a small outdoor enclosure roughly the size of a dog run. Surrounded by tall walls and covered with wire mesh, it allows a narrow view of the sky but no horizon. During that hour, Guzmán can walk in circles or do basic bodyweight exercises while a guard observes from a secure vantage point. Contact with the outside world is equally restricted. Family visits are nearly non-existent, and when approved, they occur behind thick glass with strict monitoring. Phone calls are rare, limited, and always recorded. His only human interactions are brief encounters with guards delivering food or performing security checks. Mail is screened extensively. Even legal correspondence passes through multiple inspections before it reaches him. Books and limited television are among the few diversions allowed. Inmates at ADX may request approved reading material from a small library cart, but choices are tightly controlled and censored for security reasons. A black and white television fixed to a corner shelf offers a handful of educational or religious programs. No live news, no cable entertainment, nothing that could reveal outside developments about the Sinaloa cartel or potential escape opportunities. Every procedure at ADX Florence reflects lessons learned from El Chapo's infamous escapes in Mexico. Air vents are too narrow for even the slimmest person to navigate, and floors are reinforced to prevent tunneling. Movement outside the cell requires shackles on wrists and ankles, with at least 3 guards escorting him through a series of electronically locked doors. Random searches and head counts occur multiple times a day, ensuring that no detail of his environment goes unchecked. For a man who once commanded an international drug empire and orchestrated elaborate breakouts through mile-long tunnels, the contrast is profound. The silence of his cell replaces the constant bustle of cartel operations. The strict schedule supplants the unpredictability of a fugitive life. Each day blends into the next, an endless cycle of concrete walls, timed meals, and solitary exercise. This unrelenting monotony is not accidental. It is the very strategy of ADX Florence. The prison is designed to neutralize inmates who once thrived on power, resources, and communication networks. For El Chapo, life inside the cell is more than punishment. It is the ultimate countermeasure against the ingenuity that allowed him to outsmart law enforcement for decades. The man who once slipped through the world's tightest dragnets now lives in a space where even the idea of escape is inconceivable. If ADX Florence is known as the Alcatraz of the Rockies, its reputation rests largely on the fortress-level security that keeps inmates like Joaquín El Chapo Guzmán under an iron grip. Authorities designed the facility to neutralize prisoners who are violent, escape-prone, or capable of directing crimes from behind bars. For El Chapo, who famously engineered 2 spectacular jailbreaks in Mexico, every layer of security is calculated to block even the faintest possibility of another escape or covert communication. From the moment he arrived, Guzmán was placed on the prison's most restrictive classification, Special Administrative Measures, SAMs. These measures mean that every letter, phone call, and in-person visit is scrutinized and limited. He cannot send or receive unscreened mail. Even correspondence with his lawyers passes through federal monitors. Phone calls, when permitted, are rare, and can last only a few minutes under direct surveillance. Family visits are virtually non-existent and must occur behind thick, soundproof glass with an interpreter and federal agents present. Cameras and sensors everywhere. ADX Florence is a maze of electronic eyes. High-definition cameras track Guzmán's every move inside his cell block and along the corridors. Thermal and motion sensors line the walls, ensuring no blind spots. Guards watch the live feeds in a central control room where doors, lights, and alarms can be triggered with the push of a button. Every steel door is electronically controlled and requires dual authorization, meaning two separate officers must confirm identity before any gate opens. Escort protocols. Whenever El Chapo leaves his cell, which is typically only for his 1 hour of outdoor exercise or a rare medical appointment, he is subjected to a strict escort procedure. First, he is ordered to back up to the slot in his door so guards can cuff his wrists. Only after he is fully restrained do they open the door. A 3-officer team then places shackles on his ankles and attaches a belly chain that secures the handcuffs to his waist. 2 officers flank him while a 3rd follows behind, each trained to react instantly if something goes wrong. Before he steps into any corridor, guards clear the area of other inmates and lock all doors along the path. Electronic systems seal each section behind him, creating a moving bubble of isolation. Even during the short walk to the exercise pen, he passes through multiple sally ports, small chambers with doors that can never be open at the same time, eliminating the possibility of a quick dash to freedom. Counter-escape architecture. The prison's physical design makes traditional breakouts nearly impossible. Air vents are no larger than a sheet of paper. Walls are reinforced concrete several feet thick, and the perimeter is surrounded by lethal electric fencing and motion detector fields. Armed towers overlook every inch of the compound. In addition, underground pressure sensors can detect the slightest vibration, a direct response to El Chapo's history of elaborate tunneling. Monitoring intelligence links. U.S. authorities remain alert to the Sinaloa cartel's global reach. Intelligence units continuously track cartel activity to ensure that Guzmán cannot transmit orders through coded messages. Even seemingly harmless actions, like a specific word in a letter or an unusual pattern of exercise, could trigger an investigation. Prison staff receive regular briefings about his case and are rotated frequently so that no single guard becomes predictable or susceptible to bribery. In ADX Florence, security is not just a routine. It is a living system that evolves with every new risk assessment. For El Chapo, that means a life under constant watch where privacy simply doesn't exist. Every step, sound, and movement is recorded, analyzed, and double-checked. The man who once orchestrated billion-dollar drug shipments and daring escapes now inhabits a world where even a single unguarded second is unimaginable. Life at ADX. Florence is intentionally designed to erode the senses, and Joaquín El Chapo Guzmán feels the full weight of that environment every day. While the facility provides basic medical care, its extreme isolation and monotonous routine take a toll on both body and mind, creating challenges far beyond the obvious loss of freedom. Physical strain. El Chapo spends roughly 23 hours a day in a small concrete cell with no meaningful physical activity beyond a single hour of exercise in a caged outdoor pen. This lack of movement inevitably weakens muscles and joints. Prison medical staff encourage simple calisthenics, push-ups, sit-ups, stretches, but the limited space and constant surveillance make exercise more a survival tactic than a health routine. Over time, inmates in such conditions often experience muscle atrophy, chronic back pain, and weakened immune systems due to a stagnant lifestyle and minimal sunlight exposure. The prison diet, while meeting nutritional guidelines, is bland and repetitive, offering little variety or fresh produce. Meals arrive through the food slot, usually lukewarm, and El Chapo eats alone at his concrete desk. For someone accustomed to fine dining and abundant resources, the shift to processed trays and powdered drinks is a physical and psychological adjustment. Sleep and circadian rhythm. Lights dim slightly at night, but never fully darken, disrupting natural sleep patterns. Guards conduct random checks through the observation window, making deep rest elusive. Over time, chronic sleep deprivation can elevate stress hormones, raise blood pressure, and cloud cognition. For a man once known for razor-sharp planning and quick decisions, this slow erosion of mental clarity is a profound punishment in itself. Mental isolation. The most punishing element of El Chapo's confinement is solitude. Human beings are social by nature, and the absence of meaningful interaction can trigger a range of psychological effects: anxiety, depression, irritability, and in some cases, hallucinations. Experts who study long-term solitary confinement note that even the strongest personalities can develop memory loss, confusion, or an inability to focus. El Chapo's only regular human contact comes from guards delivering meals or escorting him to the exercise cage. Conversations are limited to curt instructions: step back, hands behind your back, and never develop into normal dialogue. Visits from lawyers or approved family members are rare and heavily monitored. Even then, communication is through thick glass and often in the presence of federal agents, stripping any sense of intimacy. Coping mechanisms. Despite these conditions, Guzmán attempts to preserve a semblance of mental resilience. He requests books from the limited prison library, mostly history, religion, or basic novels, to maintain mental stimulation. He occasionally watches approved educational or religious programs on the black and white TV bolted high in his cell, though content is heavily filtered. Writing letters offers a small outlet, but every word is scrutinized by federal monitors before it leaves the prison, discouraging personal reflection or coded messages. Psychological toll over time. Psychologists warn that long-term exposure to such isolation can permanently alter brain chemistry. The lack of sensory variety, no new smells, textures, or sights, slows neural pathways responsible for processing novelty and emotional regulation. Former inmates of ADX often report lingering anxiety and difficulty re-engaging with the outside world, even after release. For El Chapo, whose sentence is life without parole, these effects will only intensify as years pass. In the end, the Supermax strategy does more than restrain a notorious criminal. It dismantles the very traits that allowed him to build and command a global empire. The man who once thrived on constant communication, rapid decision-making, and complex logistics now lives in a realm where time drips forward without variation. The psychological weight of endless sameness, every meal, every step, every echo of his own voice, is a punishment far more lasting than any steel door or concrete wall. Even as Joaquín El Chapo Guzmán endures a life of silence inside ADX Florence, his name continues to echo far beyond the prison walls. His arrest and conviction marked the fall of one of the most powerful drug lords in modern history, but the fascination with his story shows no sign of fading. Around the world, journalists, law enforcement agencies, and ordinary people remain captivated by how a farmer's son from Sinaloa built a multi-billion-dollar cartel, evaded capture for decades, and then faced justice in a U.S. courtroom. Media spotlight and cultural myth. Major news outlets still track every small update about his condition or legal appeals. Documentaries, podcasts, and investigative series dissect the rise and fall of the Sinaloa cartel and El Chapo's personal role in shaping the modern drug trade. Hollywood has taken inspiration from his exploits, weaving elements of his life into popular TV dramas and films about cartel empires. Books and exposés continue to hit the market, each promising new details about the man who turned tunnel building into an art form and outsmarted governments for years. Yet, this ongoing attention presents a paradox. On one hand, the coverage keeps alive the legend of El Chapo, a figure of almost mythical cunning who twice escaped maximum security prisons and built a global narcotics network. On the other, it reinforces the reality of his downfall, a once untouchable kingpin now reduced to a number in a concrete cell. For every admirer who romanticizes his outlaw reputation, there are countless families devastated by the violence and addiction his cartel unleashed. Impact on the Sinaloa cartel. His imprisonment forced a dramatic restructuring of the Sinaloa organization. Analysts report that while the cartel remains active, its leadership has fractured. Power struggles emerged between factions loyal to his sons, known as Los Chapitos, and other veteran lieutenants. This infighting has occasionally sparked new waves of violence across Mexico, underscoring how Guzmán's influence lingers even when he cannot communicate with the outside world. U.S. and Mexican authorities monitor these developments carefully, wary that a power vacuum could create fresh instability or allow rival groups to expand. Legal battles and appeals. El Chapo's legal team has filed multiple appeals, arguing that his trial was unfair and that the conditions of his imprisonment amount to psychological torture. So far, U.S. courts have upheld the verdict and his life plus 30 years sentence. International human rights organizations have periodically raised questions about long-term solitary confinement, but the U.S. government maintains that the extraordinary security measures are justified by his history of escapes and the global reach of the Sinaloa cartel, symbol of a larger struggle. Beyond one man's story, El Chapo's fate symbolizes the ongoing challenge of combating international narcotics trafficking. Despite his capture, demand for illicit drugs remains high, and other cartels have adapted quickly. His life serves as both a warning and a case study for law enforcement. No matter how powerful or wealthy a criminal empire becomes, persistence and coordinated intelligence can eventually bring it down. A legacy, frozen in time. For Guzmán himself, the legacy is bittersweet. His name may live on in documentaries, songs, and whispered conversations across the globe, but he will never again walk freely in the mountains of Sinaloa or command vast shipments of cocaine across oceans. Each day in his silent cell reminds him that the world he once controlled moves forward without him. In the end, El Chapo's story is a striking contradiction. He is simultaneously a cautionary tale of unchecked ambition and a cultural icon of criminal ingenuity. The global fascination continues, but the man at its center remains locked away, his legend growing even as his personal world has shrunk to 4 concrete walls and the faint, distant hum of a prison built to ensure that he never escapes, physically or symbolically, again.